In 1999, the FBI put a man on their most wanted list with a $125,000 reward. Not because he was hard to find, because nobody could figure out how he kept disappearing. No home, no city, no pattern, no name they could trust. He rode freight trains, thousands of miles of track across America. No tickets, no cameras, no record of who climbed on or got off. He would stop near a small town, walk to the closest house to the tracks, and force his way inside. Then he'd get back on the next train and vanish. By the time police in one state finished processing a crime scene, he was already 2 states over. 15 confirmed victims, possibly 23. Years of killing across 6 states. And then he walked up to a bridge at the Mexican border, shook a ranger's hand, and gave himself up like it was nothing. This is the story of the man they called the railroad killer. Most serial killers have a type, a method, something that eventually gives them away. Reséndiz had none of that. His only rule was the railway. Find the closest house to the tracks. Use whatever is there. He never brought a weapon. He never needed to. But here's the detail that stayed with investigators long after the case was closed. After each killing, he didn't leave. He sat down in the dead person's kitchen and ate their food. He went through their belongings. He took their driver's licenses and laid them out on the table, studying the faces and learning who they were. Then he packed up their jewelry, the small valuables, and sent it all home to Julieta in Mexico as gifts. He covered each body with a blanket before he left. And then he walked back to the tracks and waited for the next train. The trail began in 1986 in Bexar County, Texas. 2 unidentified people, a woman and her male companion, shot and left in an abandoned farmhouse. Reséndiz later said he killed the man because he believed he practiced black magic. Neither victim was ever identified. The case went cold for years. Then silence. 5 years of silence. Then 1991. San Antonio. A man named Michael White beaten to death with a brick and left in the yard of an abandoned house. Reséndiz confessed to it eventually. Police didn't even officially confirm the case until 2006, 15 years after the body was found. By 1997, something had shifted. He was moving faster. Between 1997 and 1999 alone, he killed at least 11 people across 5 states. Nobody connected it. Because here is what was happening behind the scenes. Police in Texas were working one case. Police in Kentucky were working another. Illinois had their own investigation. Florida had theirs. Each department saw one crime. None of them saw what it looked like from above. One man, one railway, one trail running clean across the country. August 1997. Lexington, Kentucky. 2 college students named Christopher Meyer and Holly Dunn were walking back to a party along the railroad tracks near the University of Kentucky campus. It was late. It was quiet. Reséndiz stepped out of the dark. He robbed them, bound Christopher's hands and feet, beat him to death with a 52-pound rock. Then he attacked Holly and left her there. She survived, with multiple facial fractures, a broken eye socket, and a surgically wired jaw. Holly Dunn walked barefoot over rocks and broken glass in the dark until she found a road. She became the only person who ever survived a direct attack by Ángel Reséndiz. And her story does not end there. December 1998, West University Place, Houston. Dr. Claudia Benton was a 39-year-old physician and clinical geneticist at Baylor College of Medicine. Her husband and twin daughters had left that afternoon to visit family in Arizona. She stayed home to prepare a work presentation for the next day. Their house sat a quarter-mile from the Southern Pacific Railroad tracks. Sometime after midnight, Reséndiz entered through an unlocked door. He went upstairs. He killed her and drove away in her Jeep. Police found the vehicle abandoned in San Antonio, with his fingerprints on the steering wheel. For the first time in over a decade of killing, investigators had a real name. Once the FBI task force had the name, the full picture started to emerge, and it was worse than anyone had imagined. This wasn't a new criminal. This was someone who had been in and out of the American justice system for over 20 years, convicted and deported repeatedly. On June 21, 1999, Reséndiz was officially placed on the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitives list. The reward jumped to $125,000 within days. His face was everywhere. His alias, Rafael Reséndiz Ramirez, was in every newspaper in the country. But he was in Mexico, and there was no extradition treaty. The task force was stuck. Then something happened that nobody in a law enforcement manual had ever planned for. His half-sister Manuela Karkiewicz, living in Albuquerque, New Mexico, picked up the phone. She had seen her brother's face on television. She was terrified he was going to kill again. She was also terrified the FBI was going to shoot him on sight. She reached out to Texas Ranger Sergeant Drew Carter and said she could get him to surrender. But she needed something in return. Carter made her a promise, an unauthorized one. His superiors were furious when they found out. He told Manuela that if her brother came in peacefully, he would personally make sure she received a portion of the reward money. His bosses pushed back, but Carter had made his call, and Manuela believed him. She went to Mexico, found her brother, and talked him into coming home. July 13th, 1999, El Paso International Bridge. Ranger Carter was on the American side, waiting. Reséndiz crossed on foot, his sister, 2 brothers, and a pastor walking beside him. He reached the American side, looked at Carter, and shook his hand. No gun, no resistance, no last stand. One of the most wanted men in the country surrendered like a man who had simply decided he was done. Carter kept his word. Manuela Karkiewicz received $86,000 of the reward money, and Reséndiz was flown to Houston to face everything he had done. The evidence was airtight. Fingerprints, DNA, and stolen items recovered from his home in Rodeo, Mexico, all tied directly to the Claudia Benton murder. So he tried a different angle. He pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. His defense argued he was a paranoid schizophrenic who genuinely believed he was half man, half angel, an instrument of God sent to punish the wicked. He reportedly told the court that if executed, he would enter suspended animation and rise again 3 days later in the Middle East. The prosecution psychiatrist said something much simpler, that whatever he believed, he knew exactly what he was doing was wrong. The jury agreed. Then came Holly Dunn. She walked into the courtroom. That was the first time she had seen Reséndiz since the night he left her for dead on the Kentucky tracks. She took the stand during the sentencing phase and told the jury, in her own words, exactly what he did. The jury sentenced him to death. He had asked for it. He spent years on death row at the Polunsky unit in Texas. His lawyers filed appeal after appeal arguing he was too mentally ill to be executed. Every court rejected it. A Houston judge ruled him mentally competent just days before his scheduled execution date. On the morning of June 27, 2006, he was asked if he wanted a last meal. He said no. He did sign one piece of paperwork donating his body to medical science after death. That was the only decision he made about what came next. That evening at Huntsville, the observation room filled. His family on one side, relatives of 4 of his victims on the other. Just minutes before the injection, he confessed to 6 more murders, cases that had never been solved. 6 families scattered across 6 states would eventually get answers they had been waiting years for. The U.S. Supreme Court was still reviewing last-minute appeals from his lawyers. The execution was delayed nearly 2 hours. The court rejected them all. Reséndiz looked toward the window where the victims' families were watching, and he said this, "I want to ask if it is in your heart to forgive me. You don't have to. I know I allowed the devil to rule my life. I just ask you to forgive me, and ask the Lord to forgive me for allowing the devil to deceive me. I thank God for having patience with me. I don't deserve to cause you pain. You do not deserve this." Then his last words, "I deserve what I am getting." At 8:05 p.m. on June 27, 2006, Ángel Maturino Reséndiz was pronounced dead. He was 46, the 1,028th person executed in the United States since capital punishment was reinstated in 1976. 17 deportations, 9 serious felony convictions, 11 years in American prisons, and every single time, he came back. On June 1, 1999, Border Patrol in El Paso detained and released him as a routine case, while federal warrants were already active. Nobody made the connection. 2 days later, Noemi Dominguez and Josephine Convica were dead. Think about that. The man was in custody. The warrants existed. The face was already on television, and they let him go. Back in Mexico, his wife Julieta still had no idea. She had been living with a stranger. Holly Dunn did not go to Huntsville for the execution. When asked about the execution, she said one thing: "I guess it will be a relief when he's not in the world anymore." That is the end of the story. I'd like to hear your thoughts about this in the comment section, and please subscribe to Murder Mystery for more true crime stories.